Our next two sessions will focus on the impact of longevity and meeting retirement needs in insurance products. Please join me in welcoming three panelists. First is Anna Rappaport of Anna Rappaport Consulting, an appropriately named consulting for someone named Anna Rappaport, right? Ms. Rappaport is an actuary, a consultant, an author, speaker, and she really helped us with a lot of good questions earlier in this session, too. She's nationally and internationally recognized expert on the impact of change on retirement system and the workforce issues. Next to Anna is Frank O'Connor. He's with the Insured Retirement Institute, the IRI. Mr. O'Connor is the Vice President of Research and Outreach at the IRI. And next to Mr. O'Connor is Mark Shemtob, owner of the ABAR Retirement Plan Services, LLC, a New Jersey actuarial and consulting firm specializing in the design and administration of retirement programs for small employers. Mr. Shemtob is also a certified financial planner. So we expect to get all the answers from these folks on what you can do to get prepared for your retirement and perhaps how much you need and how best to go about getting it. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. I am so happy to be with you this afternoon and to have a chance to share with you some of the research and the work that I've been involved with. I chair the Society of Actuaries Committee on Post-Retirement Needs and Risks, and contrary to any kind of rules with regard to term limits or turnover, I've been doing this since the inception of the committee, which is now over 15 years, and it's turned into really what we think is a very important research program. But I suspect for most of you, how many of you are familiar with any of our work? Just a couple of people. So I think it's a chance for you all to be aware of some new work, different work that'll be really interesting for you and is totally available for you to use. So I'm going to share just a little bit, but I'm going to start with some context, and then I'm going to present you some research findings, just a little tip of a big iceberg, and I'm going to talk there about changing capabilities and planning for retirement, and I'm going to close up with some of my ideas for maybe what some of you might do as a result of some of this research. And since what I'm doing today is just a little tip, and you might be saying, oh, I wish I could actually get those reports. In your handouts is a piece of paper that looks like this, recently published retirement research, and this is work from the Society of Actuaries Committee on Post-Retirement Needs and Risks. And the first little block is a web link, and these are a few of the reports that are out there. They're all out there, downloadable. Hope you'll look for them. One of the reports I'm going to talk about a lot today, this is just what it looks like if you in hard copy, but again, you can print it out. So they're there. Also in your handouts, we do some consumer education work. These are decision briefs about retirement decisions. There are 11 of them. They're out there. There's a web link on this piece of paper. You can download them. And yesterday we talked about long-term care, and there's long-term care papers. One of the things we've done is a call for papers. So I'm hoping I'm going to give you a little window, and you're going to want to say, I want to know more about what those people are doing because it's good and it's going to help me in my work. So let's move on now to context. And some of this is going to duplicate a little bit what we've heard yesterday, but I think a little different perspective. And I know most of you are not pension plan people, so if I use a word, an abbreviation that you don't understand, put your hand up and say, because I'm trying not to use technical language, but I might say some we've seen this major shift from defined benefit to defined contribution plans, and there are many more primary defined contribution plans today. Today's newer retirees, a fair number of them still have defined benefit plans, but they're a transition group with fewer defined and less generous defined benefit plans. And the shift to defined contribution, which for future generations will be much more, it means a loss of disability coverage in retirement plans, the loss of lifetime income options for many. And I hope these are things that will make you all perk up, because that loss of disability coverage, the loss of those lifetime income options, that means people need to rely more on insured products. That means that there's more consumer education needed because people have gaps in knowledge. They're just unaware of some of these things, and there's an opportunity for you to do some things to serve your constituents there. Have the people here thought about, for example, the gaps in risk protection in pension plans? Is that something you'll have focused on before? Anybody? Okay, well, I want you all to think about that, because I worry about it at night. I need more people to worry about that at night. Employees are largely on their own for risk protection in this emerging environment, and there are big problems with financial literacy. And I'm sure that those of you that handle consumer complaints particularly, you know about some of those issues. But people, not only do they not know some of these things, they're not well equipped for some of the concepts. We've also increasingly been studying behavioral finance in the last few years, and that's a science that really tells us how people make decisions. And the end result about behavioral finance is, rather than most people being rational, economical people, that is, I'm going to take out the options, I'm going to calculate the numbers, and I'm going to know option A is better because it's a better financial result. There are lots of other things that drive decisions, how you frame them, what you do. And this is a really important issue for consumer education, because it affects, too, how will people react to what you put out there for them. The way you frame it, you'll get different reactions. And even you'll say, well, I'm unbiased, I don't frame, but you still present one thing first and something second. That's framing. And there's a lot there that we've learned that makes it more challenging to try to help people make better decisions. Many people have limited financial assets. You heard that already. And the challenges today for also people having to invest their own money, and I know this is not your primary area, are that fixed income investment returns are so low, and there's been a lot of volatility in the markets. And my last piece of this context is that women live longer, and they're often more adversely affected by the risks. Because if you have a family that might use their money up too fast, guess what? It's the one who lives longer that's more adversely affected. Also, women are the ones that are more likely to be the caregivers and putting themselves forward for the family, and then they're there at the end. So these are some issues. And, for example, our decision briefs, one of our decision briefs and some of our other work, but one of our decision briefs is Women Take the Wheel. It's about women's issues. Oh, and any of these decision briefs, we think they're suitable for consumers. So if Consumer Education Department, you like them and you want to link to them, they're there for using, and you can contact the Society of Actuaries with questions or if you want information about them. My second thing of context is we have twice done, starting from the Survey of Consumer Finances, studies on the wealth of middle-income households aged 55 to 64, and also the report includes 64 to 75. We've done an analysis to see, well, how much do those people nearing retirement have the middle Americans? And there are some really big conclusions, and we've got two segments here. We have middle mass households and middle affluent households. So the middle mass are the 25 to 75% by wealth. First conclusion, we did this by married single women and single men, is that the married households are a lot better off. But nevertheless, the married households in the middle also don't have a lot of money, and that means even if they want to do products, they may not have the money for the products, but the households that don't have so much money have greater challenges in planning because there are so many trade-offs. They're deciding how to use the money. At the same time, the advisory community, which is out there to help people, they really want to help them invest their money, and they really want to help people that have more money because they can make more money that way. So it's a big challenge to think about what can you do for this group. Another big conclusion from this data is that the non-financial assets for the middle group are far larger than the financial assets. And what does that mean? Non-financial assets, primarily house. And for the median, the married families here, the financial assets were $96,000 median, the age 55 to 64 group, compared to $181,000 of non-financial assets. So about two-thirds non-financial assets, and it was even more extreme for the single people. The income, we said the married couples are a lot better off. The median income for the married couples in that segment was $82,000 compared to, for single females, $32,000, and single males about $44,000. We've done some estimates in some of our work about how much does it take one person to live versus a couple. About 75%. Well, that number is a lot lower than 75%. So the couples are better off. These reports are out there. You might say, oh, wait a minute, there's also newer data. We have not updated this study, but I think a lot of the findings are valid. It really changed my thinking and a lot of our thinking in an important way that maybe it'll change some of your thinking too, is when we realized that these people nearing retirement, that the house for so many families was such a huge part of the economic resources. The whole question of, are we going to sell the house and use the money? Are we going to take a reverse mortgage? If we have a mortgage, and the whole thing about the house and the finances, it's a huge issue. I would also say about this issue and about a lot of these other issues, unlike some things that we work with, for example, if you're working with an annuity product and you're worried about the valuation, there's a set of principles, and the professionals will pretty much agree. Well, these financial planning issues for individuals, for a lot of them, professionals will not agree. There's no agreement about the right answer. There's a variety of options. And one of our decision briefs is about the issues with housing, but that makes it all the more challenging, and it means your public has a lot of issues. So I'm going to move on. In this report, we looked at experiencing change in retirement. We talked about long-term care yesterday. That's a lot about change. And we did, in our work, we thought about changes affecting retirement as being in three basic lumps. Sudden, unplanned changes, and examples would be loss of a spouse, a catastrophic illness of someone in the household, major financial losses and loss of employment, and fraud is one of the issues that can lead to major financial loss. Gradual changes or aging, including cognitive decline, chronic disease, inflation, illness. Deliberate and planned change, on the other hand, that's retirement or gradual reduction in work, moving to a new location, including senior housing or continuing care retirement community, some family changes and steps to improve health. The message about these changes is that for a lot of people, some people don't plan at all, but for a lot of people who do plan, they're not really focusing on the potential changes. They're more focused on if things just go along. So that's a big gap in knowledge that we've found. Now, we heard yesterday a lot about demographics, and I believe we heard some about how long people were healthy versus not healthy. The This is an example of one of the various people have done studies of lifespan separated out between healthy and not healthy lifespan. For males age 65, with an expected lifespan of 15.3 years, 12.3 is expected to be not disabled, a year and a half mild or moderate disability, and a year and a half more severely disabled. Now, as people get to 85 for males, that goes down to a total of 5.7, of which 2.9 is expected to be healthy, and then 1 and 1.8 somewhat limited, 1.8 very limited. Oh, and I will say this most severely disabled, the third column, it's not an exact match, but that's sort of a match to if somebody had a long-term care insurance policy, that's fairly well matched to when the benefits might be payable. So the mild or moderate disability, you wouldn't expect benefits to be payable under insurance policy. Now, for women, the big message here is that while the lifespans are longer, the expected periods of disability are longer as well, and that's a really important issue to keep in mind. And this is the kind of information about health expectancy that you might want to include in some of your educational efforts. I'm going to move on now to some research findings from the committee work. And the committee is the Society of Actuaries Committee on Post-Retirement Needs and Risks. Our focus is on post-retirement risks. It's on basically primarily the middle-income individual age 50 and over. Wealthier people, their planning is about preserving their assets and inheritances and things like that, and we're not concerned about that. There's plenty of people in the market that take care of them. We're concerned about the sort of average person much more. Our committee members are very multidisciplinary, so we've had a broad range of expertise, and that's really helped us. And as I mentioned before, all the reports are there. Our core project, that the results I'm going to talk about are a lot from that. Every 2 years, we do a survey of post-retirement risk, and this survey is about what the public thinks about this, their perceptions, what they know, what they don't know, what they say they're doing. And these surveys every 2 years, each one has an area of, they have usually 3 topics that we have a few questions we repeat, and then we have questions, so we have areas of emphasis. And in 2013, we had one of the areas of emphasis was the experiencing change in retirement. We also do some focus groups and roundtables and some public education. In 15 years of work, over 15 years, while the stock market went up and down and lots of things happened, we found a lot of results that had remarkable consistency. And one of them is that there are big differences in pre-retiree expectations versus retiree experiences. So that's, again, something that if you're doing consumer education, if you're aware, and you might actually find the same thing with insurance buyers, that there are differences in expectations versus experiences later. We found that people didn't have a good idea about a number of things. The top risk concerns, pretty consistently, the order changes would have been inflation, paying for health care, paying for long-term care. I've been really puzzled about this one because while health care, people have Medicare and they're well insured, long-term care, they're generally not insured, but they still seem as concerned, or sometimes a little more concerned about the health care than the long-term care. So that's an education opportunity. Other gaps that we found is that few people think long-term. Planning horizons tend to be relatively too short. People's expectations about how they can live versus their assets, and this is also found in things like the Retirement Confidence Study, they have more expectations than they have money. There are major problems with math and financial literacy, and there's a lack of investment knowledge. And, for example, a lot of people can't do percents. Well, if you can't do percents and you don't understand compound interest, if I'm going to write you a great explanation of these long-term things, guess what? It's like I wrote it in a foreign language. There's relatively little focus on risk management. We've asked people in a number of different settings, focus groups and the surveys, about how they manage risks. And time again, the big method of managing risks is I'm going to reduce my spending. Also, some of them I'm going to pay off my debt. Well, reduce your spending helps a little bit. But if you have a big long-term care event, the fact that you reduce your spending, it doesn't really help you. There's little focus on risk management products. There are differences by gender. The women, particularly in the 2013 focus groups, were much more concerned than the men, but they show up a little bit more concerned in the risk survey, and they should be more concerned because they have this longer period. Solutions can be very difficult, particularly because of limited resources. So now I'm going to focus more specifically on this report I held up, Experiencing Change in Retirement, which was a 2014 report. It drew on the 2013 risk survey, which was conducted online, and the underlying population said, well, who did you survey? We surveyed Americans age 45 to 80 at all levels. We didn't oversample high income at all levels, so it represents the general population. They're divided, the results, by pre-retirees and retirees, and we have an oversample of widows. And on some questions, special results for widows. And our special concentration in that survey was how people decide to retire, risk management, what changes during retirement, which is what this report is about, and differences between men and women, and there's a special report on that on the website too. We also did focus groups with resource-constrained retirees. That's people that had some money, so they had to make decisions about it, but not huge amounts. And we wanted to understand about their decision to retire and their rationale for money management. Those were recent retirees. Right now, the first ones were actually last week. We're doing focus groups with people that have been retired about 15 years, and we're comparing them to the ones we did with recently retired people because we want to see how does it seem like the things that the people were saying when they were close to retirement, some of which were bothersome to us, is that working out for longer-term people? That's all on the website. The big finding that surprised everybody, including the person conducting the research, who's a major research firm, was people retired earlier than planned, which we knew before, but more so than we knew. And there's a particular twist that was a surprise. The expectation and the reality, the people who weren't retired yet, when we asked them, when do you think you're going to retire, median age was 65. But the people who were already retired, when did you retire from your primary occupation? The median age was 58. 7-year difference, huge. Now you might say, oh, well, something was probably going on when you did the survey. We've gotten similar results now about 3 or 4 times, so there's something more going on. And many retirements are involuntary, and the Retirement Confidence Study has documented that for years. But more than that, what we found out is that many voluntary retirees were pushed. And by pushed, that includes reasons like job stress and caregiving needs. And in these focus groups we did with the retirees, there was no, my dream, that wasn't there. There was no dream for practically at all. I'm going to pursue my dream. No, it was, I had this problem. And it was really very sad because of voluntary retirees. Also, we found out consistently, and other people have, that people are retiring sometimes without a careful financial analysis, even when it's by choice. And when they are doing an analysis, what we found out in repeated focus groups is that more often it's not like, oh, I might live to this age and I'm going to do this to spread out my money. Now, if they have an advisor, it's different, but it's usually a shorter term cash flow analysis. My bills are, my checks will be, and I'll be able to pay my bills. And based on what we heard last week at those first focus groups, it might even be that in that analysis, my bills might not count my taxes because my taxes aren't really part of what I decide to spend. So all of this there's lots of gaps in knowledge. Throughout this deck, and the report on the website has a lot of quotes from retirees. We just included a few samples of quotes from retirees. And I encourage people to use these in presentations, if you're writing things, because they tend to give a life to this. And I'm just going to share one with you. When the company reorganized and showed that they weren't interested in people my age, and opportunities came and went, opportunities came to younger people, and to me, it was a sign that you better start thinking about it.